As I was thinking about what to talk about today, I kept kicking around the idea of how each one of us could maybe find a way to transcend a very deep-rooted cultural conditioning called exceptionalism. That is, we've all been conditioned culturally to feel. But I wasn't having much luck with it. It just wasn't. So I have this thing in my office. It's a quagmire of clutter, and I call it my desk. So I thought I'd clean off my desk a little bit. And in doing so, Vivian gave me a few months ago a couple of handwritten inquiring mind messages that she'd written. And I misplaced them, and I found them. And the first one I looked at, I just looked down, and the first line was, "It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times." And it just stuck. That's the opening line to Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, that was performed the first time on stage in London in 1859, 158 years ago. And it was about something that transpired even before that. But it fit in 1859. It was the best of times and the worst of times. And it fits today. Today, October 8th. Today is the best of times, and today is the worst of times. It kind of depends on what you look at, how you look at it, what you're experiencing. Today, you can speak to anyone in the world in real time in about 15 seconds. You can video something, and the entire planet can have access to it in just a moment. In one day, we have the capability of traveling more miles than people 2,000 years ago traveled in their entire lifetimes. Wow. You can, at the tip of your fingers, literally, have at your disposal any bit of information, any data, any figures, any fact that you want. Just ask Google or one of his buddies. It's the best of times. It's also the worst of times. There has never been so much violence going on at any one second as there is right now on this planet. You know, I asked Google some information, and part of that factor, part of that best of times, worst of times hasn't changed as long as there have been humans. But what adds to the good and the bad is the fact that 100 years ago, in 1917, in this country, there were 100 million people. Today there are 320 million people. 100 years ago, on the face of this planet, there were 1.9 billion people. Today, there are 7.5 billion people. Almost 4 times as many people as there were just 100 years ago. What, 3 generations, 4 generations? 2,500 years ago, and I can't remember now if it was Plato or Socrates, Aristotle, one of those smart guys, thinkers, said, "It's so good that man cannot fly, or he would be polluting and desecrating the sky as he has the earth." Wow. He said that 2,500 years ago. My. I was talking to Debbie this morning. Debbie, stand up and tell your story. It's a great story.
I have a favorite cartoon that comes to mind frequently, and I was telling Pat about this. It's a Gary Larson cartoon. I don't know if any of you love Gary Larson. In this cartoon, the planet Earth goes into the doctor's office and is sitting on the examining table, and the doctor says, "Well, good news is it just looks like it's a bad case of humans, and it will run its course very soon."
You know, there's a lot to consider when we look at where we are right now in this world. Marjorie spoke about it a little bit. We get so angry and frustrated sometimes. Here we are with Humpty Dumpty on his wall. He's going to fall. And all the king's horses and all the king's men probably aren't going to get it done. That's really probably one of the things we could call the worst of times. But on the other side of that same coin, that same situation, never before has, not at least in 240 years, have the people in this country been so aware of what their great investment in apathy and complicity and complacency brought to them. And I think it is one of the wonderful times in our history when so many people are coming to the realization that I have to participate if I want to be part of this thing. I think sometimes, I think a lot. I ponder and think about our situation, all these spiritual principles and ideas and practices, and how it is that I can take part in eradicating our planet of nuclear armaments. What I can do to participate in the process of bringing about the eradication of hunger and injustice. And I get to the point where sometimes my head's going to just explode. And maybe what I'm talking about right now wants to make your head explode. So I'm going to stop. Bringing about nuclear disarmament is not my job. My job is to, right here, in this place, do the best that I can to share what I can find and what I can learn and what I can pass on about spiritual principles, spiritual laws, truths of the universe, truths of spirit, of the divine. Things that I might be able to figure out that might have the possibility of enriching our lives right here in this community. So I'm going to break down what but I've thought about all these things into something very, very simple. I'm going to assume that everyone in here has two hands. If I'm incorrect in that assumption, if you don't have two hands, that's okay, because it's just an exercise, make believe. Hold out your hands with your palms up. I'm going to offer you two things, two purposes for our lives, two jobs for us to do. Number one, in your left hand, is making a living. And in the right hand, it's making a life. It's that simple. It's not that hard. It can be extremely difficult. But it's really that simple. Those are the two major tasks we have in this life experience, is to make a living and make a life. And I think the balance of that is very, very important. As I look back at my life, I spent the from the time I was 20 till the time I was 60, I was focused entirely on making a living. My father really worked to give me a good work ethic about making a living. My mother ensured that I was in church every single Sunday of my life in the attempt to teach me how to make a life. But I missed it. I missed it, as I think a lot of us have. I concentrated on making a living. And it wasn't until not long ago that I started paying attention to that task of making a life. I can only hope that young Princess Sierra learns about both of these tasks and learns how to balance them. And that's, I think, my message today. No matter what you think, the worst of times, the best of times, it's both. It's the entire spectrum of the human experience. It's the very, very horrible. It's the very, very nth of ecstasy. And the more we can balance making a living and making a life, I think the richer that experience will be. And sometimes a few people have learned how to combine the two. And wouldn't that be wonderful if we could all learn sooner rather than later how to combine making a living and making a life. When I'm done expounding such profundity, we're going to sing, Let There Be Peace on Earth. Not yet, but we're going to sing, Let There Be Peace on Earth. Well, probably none of us is going to stand up and carry the flag and make it all peaceful. I'd venture to say not a single person in this world is going to be the leader of bringing about total peace on this planet. And I'm not so sure that that's maybe how it's supposed to be. I can think on a perfect world, and in my conception, it's supposed to be that way. But I'm thinking maybe it's not. But I'm thinking how rich a life experience we can have if we're able to bring about peace in our own heart, within our own mind, within our own community, within our families, within our relationships. We have the wherewithal to do that. It's our choice. It's your choice. You can make a living. You can make a life. You can develop a life that has peace in it as the mainstay of it, as the foundation of it. Or you can have a life with the foundation of chaos and corruption and anger and angst. All those things. All of us experience all those things. But it's what we choose to focus on. Is it the best of times? Is it the worst of times? On any given day, that ball can go back and forth over the net several times. And it's all real. It's all true. But if we can develop, I don't even want to use the word practice. I get sometimes that gets overused. If we can adjust our lifestyles and adjust our ways of thinking to give a little more focus to making a life than making a living, a little more focus to being peaceful rather than being angry. To helping someone instead of feeling lack. I think life will be a richer experience for every one of us. But that's just my opinion. I could certainly be wrong. But I'll stand here and tell you, I believe with everything in me that that is the truth.